to Katie Frank, who is the Public Affairs Officer and Public Affairs Manager for Epilepsy Society, and she's going to talk you through this morning's proceedings. Katie.
Thank you, Dame Cheryl. So good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Zoom breakfast call this morning. And before handing back to Dame Cheryl, I just wanted to run through a few practicalities. This Zoom meeting is being recorded by Epilepsy Society and the television channels ITV and BBC. By continuing on the Zoom call, you are consenting to Epilepsy Society, ITV and BBC using this recording in line with the charities activities and the media activities of ITV and BBC. If you don't want your face to appear, please just feel free to switch your camera off. Just let me know if you've got any issues continuing with the Zoom session. All attendees have been muted on arrival. I know if anybody's done Zoom calls before, they know how chaotic it can be with loads of background noise, so that's the reason for that. If you want to speak, please use the raise your hand function or the chat function, and we'll look at that. We're keeping an eye on it, and we'll unmute you once it's appropriate to do so. There will be a Q&A at the end of the call, so this is usually when you'll be speaking. What we will do is we will unmute your microphone. On your end, you'll get a pop-up to ask you to unmute yourselves. And if you can just confirm that your end, that would be amazing. So without further ado, I will hand back to Dame Cheryl Gillen, who is the Member of Parliament for Cheshire and Amersham since 1992. She's actually the local MP for the Epilepsy Society, so we're very, very pleased to have her as chair today. She's the longest serving female Conservative MP in Parliament and has held positions in the government and the shadow cabinet and has been incredibly supportive of charity in Zach's Law. I would now like to hand over again to Dame Cheryl.
Katie, that's fantastic. Thanks very much indeed, and well done on that. And I hope everybody understood those instructions. First of all, just to reinforce what Katie said, this is being recorded, so I hope everybody is now comfortable with that. And we are joined by some very important people today, but just to give you some flavour of the audience today, we are first of all joined by some people with epilepsy, and they are absolutely the most important people in this hour this morning. And we've got representatives from the Law Commission, from the DCMS Online's Harms team. We've got Professor Stefano Seri, who is a clinical expert in photosensitive epilepsy. And then we've got many members of the press, actually, and I'm very pleased to note that we've got Twitter and the BBC and ITV calendar. So thank you very much for joining us, and please forgive me anybody that I have missed out. Today is a very important day because we are going to have a look at something called Zach's Law, which is named after Zach Eagling, who joins us today, and he is certainly one of the central people that we will be talking to. And there's Zach. Let's all give a wave to Zach. Morning, Zach. There you are. I think it is very important, this subject that we're looking at today, because we are looking at the knowing dissemination of online material which is capable of causing a seizure in people with epilepsy. Now, the Epilepsy Society is started in 1892, and in fact 100 years later exactly, I became the MP for Cheshire and Amersham, and I first came in contact with the Epilepsy Society. And just to set it in context for all of you, this is the most impressive organisation. It was set up by philanthropists originally to look after people that couldn't work and that had epilepsy, and it was called the Colony, and for years, even when I was first elected, it was still referred to with great affection as the Colony. It wasn't a pejorative term at all. I have watched over the past few years this organisation come through some difficult times, but basically put at the heart of what it does its research, into genomics and neuroimaging and neuropathology, where it has been absolutely pioneering treatments. I have been and met people that are being assessed there, because one of the wonderful things they do at Chalfont St Peter is to assess people with epilepsy. And I've seen how they have developed anti-epileptic drugs and their helpline. And I've also been really inspired by the enormous number of people across the country that help fundraise and support. And they, of course, are most important for this very important medical work to continue, which really is life-changing for so many people. And that is what is so key. But you haven't come here to listen to me, and we have got a smorgasbord of presentations. So I'm going to introduce each of the speakers, and I'm going to start off with the Chief Executive Officer of Epilepsy Society. She joined in 2016, so she's got plenty of experience, Claire Pelham. And I have to say that she is one of the driving forces behind reform to the online harms campaign. And it's been called Zach's Law, which I think encapsulates it. And she's going to introduce this for us today. So Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, and welcome virtually to everyone who's joining us. We're so grateful for your support for Zach's Law. I'd like to start with an apology, really, because there's only a virtual breakfast. So what I would like to start by saying, which is we are based, as Cheryl said, in the beautiful Chalfont St Peter. And not only do we have a world famous research centre, literally ranked number one in the world for the research that we do, we also have world famous fry-ups. And if you're at any time in the vicinity, you are more than welcome to drop in, have a tour of the research centre and a really good breakfast. So I would normally start by talking about Zach's Law and explaining how we came to call it that. But as we have our guest of honour with us, I think I'm going to leave it to Zach and his mum to say a little bit more about their personal circumstances and to explain perhaps how the charity became involved and how we found out that old-fashioned laws and, forgive me, I'm going to be straightforward about it, complacent social media companies have led to online being a safe space for criminals and bullies to attack people with epilepsy. I know that many people use the word trolls, but I prefer to say bullies and criminals, because if what they do happened in any other forum, that's what we would call them. And that's why we need the law to catch up with the way we lead our lives. And I know that many of us have had personal experiences which have been very, very distressing. But the straightforward comparison that we make to the Law Commission about the need to change the law is the comparison with physical space. So if you like, so I like going for a coffee on a Saturday morning. I like going to a coffee shop and I sit there with my phone, as many of us do, scrolling through, having my coffee. And if a bully came up to me and tipped my scalding coffee in my lap and pushed me over so I banged my head, I think we could all be pretty certain that that bully would be in a criminal court before very long. If he came and sat next to me and sent me a tweet which caused me to have a seizure so that I spilt my scalding coffee in my lap and banged my head on the floor, I think we can be 100% certain that nothing would happen to him. And the reason that I sadly say that is, as far as the Epilepsy Society is aware, there has not been one single successful prosecution for this behaviour, not one in the UK. So I think the case for the law to change is pretty clear. As I say, we've all had our individual experience of this, and we have been overwhelmed by the reports that we've had from many people of what's happened to them. But the way it came into particular prominence for the charity was in May, when in a 48-hour period, we had 24 of these flashing gifts sent to the charity, with many of our supporters targeted, and we know that sadly that some people did have seizures as a consequence. Paige, who you can see on your screen, used to work for the charity, putting out support messages and information on social media. Her biggest single task today is to take down these attacks which have continued over many months. And I'm sure that our friends at Twitter will forgive me if I say that although they have responded to our requests, and so has the GIF library Giphy, we sometimes feel like Paige is an unpaid employee of Twitter doing their work for them. And it just seems a little puzzling to us that a charity should have to work as an unpaid worker for a big social media company with all its resources. So here we are, bailing out the rising flood of attacks by criminals and bullies, and continually a little bit puzzled, and I would love to hear from them why it is that the social media companies don't turn them off at source. I'm sure that those of you who are more techie minded than me will understand that they have big research departments. They are world expert in algorithms. I'm not going to say anything more about algorithms because algorithms are a very sensitive subject at the current time. But it seems to us to be not at all impossible that with the right incentives that they could turn off these awful, cowardly attacks. And I'm seeing by the messages that some of you have also found them very slow to respond. So this is how we came to conclude that a change in the law was necessary. And we're delighted to be joined by our friends at the Law Commission and have their support. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but they have made some really helpful recommendations for a change in the law. But essentially, I don't want to take up too much of your time with technical legal explanations, but essentially what we're asking the government to do, they have a piece of legislation coming forward in the near future called the Online Harms Bill. And we're asking them to include in that bill a provision that will make these attacks unlawful. The police have done their best, but it's been 6 months since we've reported these attacks to them. And I think they're genuinely perplexed about how to prosecute them. So we need to make it absolutely clear that it is against the law to give the police the powers to prosecute successfully. And we also need to put a duty on the social media companies to do their best to stop them at source, because that's the real answer. While we can bring the law into the 20th century, what we really want to do is to stop these attacks so that people are not victimized and live in apprehension of one of these things popping up in their social media posts or on their timeline, because that anxiety, as we know, can in itself cause seizures. So that's what this campaign is about. And we're incredibly grateful for your support with it. We've made really good progress. We have indeed a letter from the Prime Minister saying he sympathises with our cause, and he's taken it up with the Secretary of State at DCMS. But what we don't have yet is a provision in the bill. We don't have a cast iron guarantee from our friends at DCMS that they're going to change the law in the way that we're asking them to. And I say this with all sympathy and understanding for civil servants who do an amazing job in difficult circumstances, but we're not going to give up till we do. We know that we have got lots and lots of support, and we're not going to let the bullies rest until there is a provision in that bill to change the law in this way. So I think I'll stop there, Cheryl, if I may, and hand back to you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll remain unmuted, otherwise it's going to take up too much time. Thank you so much, Claire, for that introduction. And I think that one of the most important things for everybody to realise is that online harms often take a while to affect people or affect them psychologically. This is an immediate physical effect that can be had on an individual, and therefore it is an assault. In my view. Some of our speakers have had some difficulty, I think, getting in, but it gives me great pleasure because we're going to go to the person after whom this law could potentially be named. And I'm going to go to Zach Eagling and his mother, Claire Keir. Now, Zach, I hope you don't mind. A gentleman should never reveal his age, but he is 9 years old and
Yeah.
he lives with his mum in West Yorkshire. He really has not let cerebral palsy or epilepsy affect him and his determination. And what I think is so wonderful is that he was inspired by Captain Sir Tom Moore, and did 130 laps of his garden during the 2.6 challenge, which is pretty impressive. And he finished those laps on your 9th birthday, I understand. So that is really fantastic. And he raised, ladies and gentlemen, £11,500 for the Epilepsy Society. I told you the fundraising was inspiring for this organisation. And Claire has posted about Zach's progress on Twitter during that 2.6 challenge. And unfortunately, I will let them take up the story. But what is absolutely revolting is that her tweets were targeted by trolls. I am ashamed of those people that targeted your tweets. Over to you, Claire and Zach.
Thank you, Dame Cheryl. Good morning, everybody, and thanks everybody for joining us today. As has just been mentioned in the introduction, Zach decided in lockdown that he wanted to follow in Captain Tom's footsteps, quite literally. We'd left his walking frame in school, which he used to have to use to do any kind of walking, and during lockdown actually managed to start taking some independent steps. So we decided to use that opportunity to try and raise some much needed funds for the Epilepsy Society. As everybody then knows, these tweets that we shared, originally we didn't know that we'd been targeted. I think Nicola, it was yourself that contacted me to say, I hope you've not seen anything. I think Paige, you must have taken them down before we'd actually had a chance to see them, luckily. So at the point, it was kind of, we didn't really understand it, did we?
No.
And then soon after we started seeing the actual tweets, things were absolutely revolting. I got quite emotional at one point. I think I remember phoning you, Nicola, and letting you know that more things had been posted. And like you said, at the time, you were absolutely inundated with it. It was, you know, it was quite scary, the volume and the speed at which these people could send these attacks, and also the motive behind it. And I think that's the kind of point that we want to get to, is that why do we want epilepsy to be included in the online harms bill? So basically, as much as we're, you know, hoping to call it Zach's law, it's not about us personally. We can't take those attacks personally. These people don't know us. What we're campaigning for is to help the entire community of people that have epilepsy. Social media should be able to help these communities. It shouldn't enable bullies and keyboard warriors to attack these communities. We should all be able to stand together, support each other without fear of being, like you're saying, Claire, about being assaulted online. I was going to use a similar example of, you know, you're out in public, you're scrolling through your phone. If somebody came up to you and punched you in the face, kicked you in the face, that kind of experience, they would be prosecuted. But yet somebody with epilepsy could be scrolling through their phone, see one of these GIFs, end up having a fully convulsive seizure in the middle of public. You know, they could bang their head, they could sprain a wrist, bite their tongue. The worst part about convulsive seizures is people lose control of the bladder. Imagine being laid in public, you know, in a cafe, a restaurant, something like that, and that kind of situation happens to you. Not only is it physically traumatic, it can be psychologically traumatic, it can be completely humiliating. People are also labelled as being drunk, on drugs, if these kind of situations happen. And another thing that I wanted to mention about, obviously not of Zach's age, but adults with driving licenses. People could have gone almost 2 years seizure free. They're about to apply to the DVLA to recover their driving license, and all of a sudden they innocently go onto social media, something like that happens, and then they've got to start all over again. So then that's their independence taken. So what people don't realise when they're doing these actions is these are the kind of repercussions that somebody with epilepsy, you know, these are the repercussions personally for people. The repercussions for them is on to the next. Sit at the keyboard, sit at the phone, next. and they'll find some other community to bully, whether it's the gay community, whether it's the black community, you know, anything they will find just to assault and abuse, and it's not right. And this is why we're all here today, to try and put an end to this.
Oh, thanks so much, Claire, and thank you, Zach. There, you're ably supporting your mother, but I think it just brings it home how dreadful this is. And I just point to the chat on the side and a lovely message from Faye Wadhams. Thank you, Faye, for that, because that is really important. And you should know we're all behind you and all rooting for you. But I think you've described vividly the horror of this. I'm going to go on to, I hope, Sophie Harris. Sophie, I can see you there. Sophie has actually been working at Epilepsy Society on the online harms campaign since it was first highlighted, I have to say, by the BBC. And she was diagnosed with photosensitive epilepsy when she was 15 years old. She's now down in Somerset and works as a dietitian. I can see you all prepared to go for your working day, so thanks for coming to breakfast. And just as we say thank you to Zach and Claire, I don't know when you have to go off to school, Zach, but if you do disappear, we'll understand that. And thank you so much for coming on today. And let's hear from Sophie.
So as it was said, I had an interview with BBC about 18 months ago when this bill first came about. And I had lots of radio interviews as well. I had a really extensive day talking about epilepsy. And on that day, I had so many attacks sent to my social media that I actually had to delete my Twitter account because it was just coming through thick and fast. I have sort of always said that my photosensitive epilepsy is the biggest impact on my life. Because for me, like Claire said, I've just been able to have my driver's license. I work in the hospital. I'm 45 minutes away from where I live. I drive to and from work every single day. For me, even the sunlight flickering through trees is a trigger potentially, so I close one eye just to try and reduce that interaction. So yeah, if I'm at home and I'm just scrolling through social media, as I was when I was working all the way through the COVID pandemic, it was sort of a break for me to get away from what I was experiencing at work. If I have a seizure, I'm at home alone, potentially, if my partner's at work or is away. I have a seizure at home, I'm always bite my tongue. That's a sort of known thing that happens for me. I lose my memory for anywhere between 1 day to 1 week. So if I lose my memory, then I can't sort of explain to my colleagues what I've done sort of the day before with other patients. I can't give handover for not just myself, but for other patients as well in the hospital under my care. I'm coming up to 3 years seizure free in November. Hopefully that will stay that way. But a key example is during lockdown I downloaded TikTok like many other people did just to pass some time. There's an effect that TikTok have on their social media platform with flashing lights. It's not got a trigger warning in. It's up to the creator to put that trigger warning in. And that's on automatic play, and it can come up based on, as you mentioned, algorithms. And that's down to the creator. So if that awareness isn't there, it's something that has been created by a social media company that I found triggering. And I was really concerned. And then to have to go back and watch that video to report it was really, really difficult. And luckily I was with my partner at the time and he was able to report it. But I've heard nothing from TikTok from that and that was coming up 4 months ago. I have a professional dietetics Instagram account and I've had to remove any links to Epilepsy Society because I get message requests veiled as seeking advice for dietetics and health promotion campaigns, but then have a triggering GIF as a subcontext. So they'll send me an initial screenshot video. It doesn't look like it's going to be triggering, so I watch it. It's got a triggering GIF on it. If you report that, it has to be the account that is posting harm. If they send you direct messages, it doesn't get dealt with. I've blocked, God knows, countless amounts of people for it, and there's never any comeback. But for me, the comeback would be losing my independence, finding it incredibly difficult to get to work and do my job, which I love, but also losing my memory. It's something that's so debilitating. My first seizure was in Lanzarote. I can't remember how I left the country. And that's really impactful on my day-to-day life. And it's just one of those things. I've fought so hard to be independent with my epilepsy, that someone who just wants to have a laugh, have a bit of a fun from their point of view, can just take so much away from me, and they won't get prosecuted. And I think that's something really needs to be done, not just from social media companies to allow direct messaging to be reported as abuse and online harms, but also for them to actually see some consequences. And I do think that the more these attacks go on, because if you just block a user or ban them from that platform, they can just make another email account, make another account. There's not going to be any consequence for them for that. But for people with epilepsy, we lose our whole life for one seizure.
Sophie, thank you very much. I mean, first of all, 3 years. That is fantastic, and long may it continue. That is really good. And, yeah, I can see Claire is clapping there. But some very important messages in your experiences that you've shared with us. I mean, first of all, why should people with epilepsy effectively not feel that they can use TikTok? I mean, we ought to be able to make sure that everybody with epilepsy can use every social media platform. I would have thought that that was essential. So maybe TikTok can take that on board. But also the fact that these are premeditated, targeted attacks. The fact you can't link to Epilepsy Society is alarming. Again, it's a real indictment of the people that do this, and also this gap in the law, which I think we really must fill. We're now going on to Leon Legg, who I see has been unmuted, and I'm very pleased to welcome him. He's a footballer at Port Vale FC, it says here, but I don't think that tells the whole story. First of all, I think you're club captain, Leon, aren't you?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, club captain. And if I'm right, I believe yesterday you beat Wigan 3-1 away?
3-1, yeah. I wasn't playing yesterday, I was rested, so...
yeah, but yeah. Obviously you were influencing from the sideline. But more importantly than this, Leon is a defender, and he's a defender in more ways than one. He runs the blog Epilepsy Baller to raise awareness of epilepsy. So Leon, first of all, thank you for what you do. That's fantastic. I hope you get back on the pitch soon, but I'm really glad you beat Wigan Athletic yesterday. I think I must have a soft spot for Port Vale. Over to you.
Okay, morning everyone. Yeah, so I'll just talk about my experience with this and the social media. So I think Zach's mum said it all really, where you know, it's a form of bullying. I've seen this type of group target many other communities, and you know, you see time and time again that people are just getting away with it. I've never seen an arrest or a prosecution in this area, and I think it is time for social media to catch up with the law, and things need to start being done. For me personally, I've been targeted. If I was to have a seizure, luckily enough I'm not photosensitive, but if I was to have a seizure, then I would miss training. Most of the week, the recovery time for me to get back out on the pitch would be around about a week or so, and then financially, I miss out on bonuses and money and things like that. So a lot of personal things, you know, to confidence to get back out and train and play is another thing. Not only that, my wife would then be left to deal with 2 kids and run a business as well without me while I recover. So many things that come into this, and it is about time that, you know, everything is caught up with this subject. There's so many things to say on this subject. We could be all day, but it just seems that the law is just miles behind, and like I said, this it's just time to catch up. It is time to catch up. You know, you can't just target people and we get away with it, and it's so easy now to just make up fake profiles and target individuals and groups and just get away with it. and then there need to be measures in place. And when signing up to these things, I know there's been suggestions in the past where passport IDs and things like that to be put in while you're signing up to these kind of platforms. And I think that is one way where it could go, so that people are able to be traced and caught when they are targeting people.
Leon, that's fantastic. And I have to say, I entirely agree with you. It seems to me that the bullies, the cowards and the attackers can hide behind this anonymity on social media platforms. And if you wish people no harm, and if you want to use these platforms correctly, there should be absolutely no problem in identifying yourself. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And the point you make about the family having to bear the brunt is really, really important. I remember when I was very little, my grandmother, who lived with us, had what we described as petit mal, but it meant every now and then she had a fit. And the effect of that on my family and on my mother and my father, who looked after her, was quite profound. And so the point you make about your wife and your kids, and I think I've seen other people nodding on the breakfast call, and I think that's a powerful point. Thanks so much for your time today. Chris Coleman, you're up next. I can see you're unmuted. And this is horrible. Chris is going to tell us about his experiences. He was targeted during a Twitter attack earlier this year. Chris, I'm so sorry about that. I hope everything's okay with you now, and we're looking forward to hearing your experience. It will help others, and it will help inform the people that are on this call. Thanks. Chris, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I was targeted on that day. It was tough. I remember just scrolling on Twitter just like normal, and saw these attacks going on. I felt it was my duty to try and report and block as many of these accounts as possible. I got through about 5 or so, and then the simple partial seizures started, so I had to stop. In itself, simple partial seizures aren't too bad for me, but they can lead to the worst seizures. They can morph into a complex partial, which can generalize into a tonic-clonic seizure, or a grand mal, as people know it. And that would have profoundly changed my life. At that point, I was about 2.5 years seizure-free of the tonic-clonics, which was great. And I had recently been granted clearance to apply for my driver's license. So if this attack had triggered a grand mal seizure for me, then I would have lost that. And I would have had to wait another 2 years to be seizure-free to get my license again. And I lost my license almost 20 years ago and haven't been able to get it back until now. So it would have just been heartbreaking for myself and my family if that happened. But I guess it's just heartbreaking to know that so many people, so many good people who are just struggling to survive and to get through day-to-day surviving, dealing with epilepsy, have to deal with these bullies and these trolls. And their actions are just despicable, honestly. I consider it assault. It's no different, like others have said before here, it's no different than someone just punching you in the face, honestly. So I think it's assault and it should be treated as such. And one thing I want to mention is I was sort of looking into this afterwards. I had blocked these accounts, but other people were talking about it on Twitter days afterwards. And one brave person, and I can't remember who they were, ventured into the feeds of these trolls or bullies, whatever we want to call them. And just for knowledge's sake, posted screenshots of what they were posting, what they were saying. And some of it was so disturbing. And I almost wish I hadn't read it. But it became clear that these people enjoyed hurting people, and they enjoyed causing pain to people, and they wanted to trigger seizures in people for their own enjoyment and amusement. And it's despicable. The worst thing is that they felt satisfaction in getting away with it. And I think that's an important point, because these people, they can't be allowed to hide behind their masks any longer. They need to be held accountable for their actions. So,
Chris, thank you very much, and a lovely message from Leon for you in the chat if you want to have a look. So,
I will. Thank you.
Which is really nice, and Claire thinks you've made a good point about stealing your independence. I remember when I was told about this, first of all, I still almost can't believe it, that another human being can actually go out of their way to harm people. And I'm sorry by reading further that you wished you hadn't read it, but of course this could in fact end up with the ultimate causing a loss of life, and that's where we really cannot take this too seriously. It really is so serious that it needs to be dealt with. We've got 2 more speakers, everybody, so hang on, and then we can take the questions. We're going to have Nicola Swanborough, who's going to talk about, she's the head of external affairs at Epilepsy Society. John couldn't make today's event, but she's going to talk about his experience because he had a direct epilepsy attack, I think, from the flashing gifts on Twitter. And then the last speaker will be Ellie Lumbis, and she's in contact with my friend. We were elected at the same time, Oliver Heald, who's her MP, and she's asking him to back Zach's law campaign. I doubt you'll have much trouble persuading Oliver, and if you do, I'll be on his case because we came into the House in '92 together. So I'm going to go very rapidly, first of all to Nicola and then to Ellie. Nicola.
Thank you. So yes, this is from John, who is one of our Twitter followers. I don't think he's actually following us any longer because it's actually too dangerous for him. He wasn't able to join us today, but I have got a statement which he wrote at the time. So John said, "I was diagnosed last month with photosensitive epilepsy at the age of 25. A friend suggested following Epilepsy Society on Twitter for advice and help. As soon as I went onto the page, there were flashing images which caused me to have a grand mal seizure, biting through my tongue in the process. I then went on to have a focal awareness seizure. I don't know how to stop the trolls, but I'm terrified of having another seizure. Epilepsy has already been a massive change to my life, and I am genuinely terrified of Twitter now." So that's thank you to John from that.
Nicola, thank you, and we'll go straight to Ellie.
Hello.
Hi, Ellie.
Hello.
Over to you.
Yeah, so I got photosensitive epilepsy 6 days after my 7th birthday. It was something that broke my parents' heart, like 100%. The cause of that was from my 7th birthday, I had a disco, and I just woke up in the hospital thinking, where am I? What's going on? I've had it for nearly 10 years now. I'm planning on making a movie this year on the 17th of November. I'm calling it 10 years to celebrate the 10 years that it's been for my epilepsy. My epilepsy journey has been really hard. People bullied me really bad about it. They all called me Epileptic Ellie and would try flashlights in my eyes to give me a seizure. And it's just disgusting behavior. Why somebody would want to do it, I have absolutely no clue. Like, what they really need to think about is, would it be funny if they or someone they cared about had it? Like, they need to think of, like, you know, what would happen.
Well, Ellie, good luck with the film. That sounds really good. My constituency in Chalfont St Peter, where Epilepsy Society is just round the corner from Pinewood Studios. So you never know, you may have a career coming up in filmmaking. But thank you for sharing that experience. And I think it just brings alive how traumatic this is. And I shall look forward to seeing this film. I hope that will be very cathartic for you. I hope it'll be good for you and able you to to actually deal even better. You obviously deal very well with this, so well done, and thank you so much for coming on here. Now, just at the 11th hour, up pops the blonde bombshell, Tracy Brabin, my colleague, who is the MP for Batley and Spen, and actually she's also, I have to say, the Shadow Minister for Cultural Industries. So she has a double role because she's Zach Eagling's local member of Parliament. So there you are, Zach, there's your MP. And like me, supports Zach's law. She was at the top of the bill, I have to tell you, but I think we had a little technical difficulty with you joining us, Tracy. So a couple of minutes from you would be fantastic, and then we'll go to questions for everybody. So over to you, Tracy, and morning.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and huge apologies I'm late because I actually missed also people's own stories, which what drives us as politicians is supporting the people we care about who, you know, can be facing challenges. And certainly it was my absolute pleasure to support Zach and his family. And what an amazing young man. I'm so proud I'm his MP. And I think he should definitely be doing a tour of all the schools once the schools are back up and running, more less socially distanced, as an inspirational young man, turning adversity into something hugely positive. So, you know, honestly, Zach, you're a pal and you're a legend, and I'm really proud of you. But there is something obviously more serious running under this, isn't there? The idea that these trolls, and they are vile people because what gain they get from disrupting people's lives, and in some cases actually physically harming people. I don't understand it, but we have to accept that they are a part of modern life, and that we must do what we can to make sure that they don't harm us, and that we can use the social media, which has massive benefits, as we've seen during lockdown, to keep us connected, that we can use it safely, and that we're not concerned about our young people going online. Obviously, this was a terrible instance, and I know that there is work being done, that the gifts that they were using are being looked at again. The Twitter website, Twitter platform, I know that there are campaigns for them to come on board. But more fundamentally, I think in my role as a Labour MP, I'm quite distressed by how long it's taken for the online harms bill to come through Parliament. I know we've had COVID, I know we've had many elections and so on, but certainly Lord Putnam in the House of Lords, who is leading on this bill, has said it doesn't look like it's going to be any time sooner than 2023-24, and I think that is far too late for people like Zach and others who can be easily targeted. I think the Epilepsy Society, what an amazing advocacy group, really bringing people together like this call today to say, you know, we're going to push back. And we're going to demand swift action from government, because it's really important that we make sure that these amazing, you know, multi-billionaire platforms are serving the people. They take our data, they have a responsibility to keep us safe. So I don't want to take up lots of time, because I'm hoping there might be some more personal stories. I don't know what the rest of the schedule is looking like. But certainly as your MP, Zach, I'll do everything within my power as an opposition MP to make sure that we stand shoulder to shoulder together against these trolls, because they are destroying lives, and the malevolence that they're showing is not fit for the 21st century. This is not how we are as a society, and certainly hasn't COVID and the way that our communities have come together shown us that we are stronger when we are a community, when we stand by our most vulnerable and protect our most vulnerable and defend our most vulnerable. So I'm with you. I think you're doing an amazing job. I'm so proud to be part of this campaign. And thank you, Ellie, as well, I caught your story. And I think, you know, that's the way empowerment comes, is to tell your story with pride. And also, you know, to be creative, because I know, as someone who was an actor and writer for decades before I became a member of Parliament, I know that the creative instinct is very good for healing. And in fact, I spent time working with victims of torture in a writers group, and I found so much laughter, positivity within that group because you were able to tell your story. So I think it's great that we get these stories out there, and it's great that we stand together to say to the trolls, you can have a go, but you can take us on, but we will push back and we'll protect and stand up for people like Zach and Ellie. So I'm so sorry again that I was late. I'm so delighted to be here and to be supporting Zach's law. Thank you.
Tracy, thanks very much. And just for everybody, Tracy may be a Labour MP and I may be a Conservative MP, but I'm a very powerful believer in cross-party cooperation. I chair the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Autism, and I'm the Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Epilepsy. And one of the great strengths of Parliament is when we work across party, we're not always at each other's throats. And I think that absolutely evidences it with what Tracy has said today. But Ellie, I didn't realise that David Putnam was leading the bill in the Lords, and I used to work with David. And certainly I think your film, when you make it, should definitely go to David Putnam, because he used to make the most wonderful films when I was working in the film industry, and has made a first-class politician as well. So there's a destination for your film. Can I just say, Sophie put a very poignant message up there, Sophie, and thanks for that. Apparently the messages that come from these trolls often finish with the words, I hope your life is ruined now. Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, it takes your breath away, doesn't it? Penny Lewis has put some information up in the chat from the Law Commission, and Catherine Hodder from Young Epilepsy has got some stuff in the chat, so please read that. It's probably a bit too long for me to read out. But what I'm going to do now is open it up to questions from everybody, and I think probably I'm going to leave Claire in the driving seat of this. Can anybody that's got questions put their hands up or indicate? I think Claire Bagnall is first, Claire, so can we give Claire the floor? Open her mic. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi. The question that I wanted was to ask is really in relation to prosecution, because a few years ago, an American journalist was targeted on Twitter with a flashing GIF, and the person who sent it ended up with a prison sentence. So if Twitter is such a worldwide platform, then why can't that be applicable to those of us who are receiving them? It got to a stage when the attacks originally started that I got so angry, I started to troll the trolls. And I was putting copies of this news article on their timelines, and it seemed to work a little bit. Some of them got very scared and stopped. But I'm just wondering if that's something that they would consider doing in the future, you know, like regardless of where they live, because a lot of them are based in America. I don't know if you know this. Just if it's something that we could bring in, that regardless of what country you're from, you could face prosecution. Is that possible from a legal point of view?
Claire, do you want to field that, or if there's anybody else that would like to pick that up? Claire, can we open the mic for Claire?
I'll start, but I'll start with some diffidence because we have among us a very eminent lawyer in Penny Lewis. So I think I'll make a start because it's many years since I was responsible as a senior civil servant for extraterritorial jurisdiction. But I think I'll let the lawyers deal with that one.
Yes, yeah, we'll go straight to Penny, shall we? That'd be easier.
But I just wanted to mention that it may not be as difficult as perhaps the police think to prosecute some of these crimes, but it is a very specialist area. And one of the things that we have done, and we're waiting for her reply, is ask the Attorney General to give guidance to the CPS on how best to prosecute these offences. I mean, we know just in this breakfast meeting today how many people are affected, and yet still no prosecutions. So it feels to me like this is something we could do as an interim measure, some guidance for the CPS. But over to you, Penny.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks for the question. I think the extraterritoriality point, so the point about people outside England and Wales, sending these messages is quite difficult. Generally, the criminal law is very much sort of country specific. So someone might be prosecuted in a state in the US for something that they've done in that state. Someone might be prosecuted in England and Wales for something that they've done in England and Wales. So I think it will be unlikely that there will be extraterritorial versions of these offences, even if the government does reform the communications offences in the way that we've proposed. But I do think that there is scope for prosecutions right now, as I said in my message, for really quite serious offences. And there's a danger that we get sidetracked into thinking this is the internet, therefore we need internet specific offences, when actually, as many people said right at the beginning of this seminar, this feels like assault. Well, you know, that you're right. It is assault, and it should be prosecuted as a form of assault because those are more serious offences. And this is an assault and causes serious physical harm to the person who is being assaulted. So the offences that we've suggested should be used in this context are assault causing actual bodily harm or intentionally inflicting grievous bodily harm, which is really, really serious bodily harm. So I'd certainly be in favour of sort of filtering that message down to the police on the ground, who understandably, you know, struggle with a huge range of offending on the internet and might well be forgiven for thinking, well, we need to look at the communications offences here. But in addition, we've also proposed, as I said, some reforms to the communications offences, which would focus them more on the likely harm caused by the sending of a communication, which I think will also make them better suited to deal with this type of offending. But I think, you know, if you take one message away in terms of the law, it's that there isn't really a gap. It's that people think that there's a gap, but actually the existing law, which dates from the 19th century, could accommodate this type of behavior and better reflects the seriousness of it.
Well, thanks for that, Penny. I think that's a message there for both Tracy and I, and also ultimately to the online harms bill team, because if we have the capabilities of carrying out those prosecutions, then I think we should. Certainly the mens rea of the offence is there when you send a message saying, I hope your life is ruined now. I mean, that's absolutely clear. I don't think any lawyer would have a problem arguing that from the prosecution perspective. So that's really helpful. And maybe through the APPG on epilepsy, we should be starting a campaign in Parliament, literally putting down written questions and raising this when we can, because I think that would be useful if we can use the existing platforms, but also the guidance that is required for the CPS and also for the police really needs to be developed. And for those people that are civil servants on there and ex-civil servants, I think we're going to have to put our thinking caps on to see how we can do that. More questions. I haven't seen any more hands up, but I'm hoping there may be any more questions from anyone. I don't know whether Katie can see or Paige can see anybody that I can't. Oh, Claire.
I can see the chat, so if anyone wants to put anything in the chat, just if they want to write the word question, I'll flag that up.
I would be particularly interested to know about people's experiences of reporting to Twitter and other social media companies, because one of the benefits of expanding the definition of online harm is it does include the possibility of financial penalties on social media companies that don't assist the police with prosecutions. And I know that some people have had delays and lack of responsiveness when they've been reporting these incidents. I can see Sophie nodding. Sophie, could you tell us about your experience?
And then we'll go to Aidan, who has a question.
Yeah, so following the BBC interview, when I received the torrent of attacks that day and even throughout the night, I reported it to Twitter and to Facebook and Instagram and across platforms, and I am yet to even still receive any response. That's why I've actually deleted my Twitter account, is because those attacks continued throughout, and even on my professional dietetics account, when I do get those veiled messages come through, when I report them, I've not had any response. I actually had to report one, what day is it? About a week ago, I had to report one, and I'm yet to receive a response from Instagram for that as well. So I've never actually had any response from any of the social media companies.
Well, I think that needs to be really taken on board by the social media companies, because that is appalling. But also, when I'm talking to my police force and the Thames Valley Police Force, they always make this point: unless these incidents are reported, or unless incidents are reported to the police, they don't know about it, and people sometimes are very reticent about reporting to the police. And I would encourage people to report these attacks to the police, because I think that they need to realise the frequency with which these are occurring, and of course the harm they do. I think Aidan's there and he's got an open mic. So Aidan, your question.
Hi there, thank you, Dame Cheryl.
Where you're from as well.
I've suffered from epilepsy for 13 years now. I'm 25. And it always presents itself with grand mal seizures. You know, so I wake up on the floor in a daze, having wet myself, you know, and it's something I've lived with for many years. And when we talk about epilepsy, we often talk about the physical effect of epilepsy, the seizures. But we should also, in my opinion, we should also talk about the mental effect of having epilepsy, because I'm not ashamed to admit this, but I've lived in almost a constant state of terror since having epilepsy, because it's come back. I was seizure free for 5 years and it's come back. It's just last month I had my first seizure in almost 2 years. It keeps on coming back. And so I'm constantly terrified of, if I go out the house, what happens if I have a seizure while I'm crossing the road? What happens if I have a seizure while I'm in the bath? What happens if I have a seizure while I'm cooking? You know, there's so many, you know, things that could happen, that could go wrong. And I'm very lucky that I live with a partner. And so I've kind of got that security. But not everybody has that. And it's a thing that I just don't feel that we talk about enough. Is, of course, you've got the horrible side of it, you know, as we spoke about, having sent gifts that can cause seizures. And I've been victim of that. Thankfully, I'm not photosensitive. So I've not, had a seizure from these gifts, but people have sent them to me with the intention of causing one. But we also have this horrible, mental side effect of the fact that this is an illness that there is no cure for. There is treatment, but there is no full cure for. My medication clearly doesn't stop it. It just helps. And I think that's just something, as everybody who wants to support people who have epilepsy, we just all need to kind of speak about more and let everybody know that it isn't just the physical side of it. There is this severe mental health side of having epilepsy that we need to talk about.
Absolutely, Aidan, and thank you so much for that, because I think that that is really important, particularly when we are all very conscious of people's mental health with what has been happening with coronavirus. And I think set against that background, that's a powerful message. Now, I notice we're at 9:59 and we said we would stop at 10. Can I just say that I'm going to hand back to Katie, who will tell you what will happen now, or Claire, I'm not sure which one, but can I thank everybody that has participated in this, and I hope that these are very powerful messages that have gone out to the media, and certainly it's impressed even more upon me, and I'm sure on Tracy as well, exactly what needs to be done and what we need to do and work together. So thank you everybody that has participated in this, and back to Katie or Claire. Thank you.
So I would just like to add my thanks before Katie wraps up for us, and to say that I've taken away a couple of actions, which is, first of all, and importantly, we're not giving up on our campaign for the provision in the online harms bill. And I know our friends at DCMS know this, but the very least that bill should do is stop online being an unsafe space for people with epilepsy. But we take the point completely that there may be some time where to elapse before we get the bill. And as Cheryl said, I think there's more that we can do. Perhaps we should meet with the Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police together to reinforce the action that he could perhaps be giving guidance to his team for. And I think we should renew our requests to the attorney for some guidance to the CPS, so that we make the most of the existing law while still campaigning for changes. And please, please, please don't give up reporting to Twitter and to your local police force, because the more that they're aware this is a problem, the more likely it is that we'll get some answers. Katie.
Okay, well, thank you to Dame Cheryl for chairing this debate, and she's done a wonderful job. And thank you all for attending, and everybody who's contributed, both speakers, attendees, people who've asked questions. I think it's just been a fabulous session, very interesting, and I think everyone would agree quite enlightening as well. So that brings our session to a close. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, and if you're tweeting about it at all, lest we prompt the Twitter trolls, it is the hashtag Zach's Law, and I know Paige has been commenting on Twitter during this, so look out for that on our Twitter account, and thank you everybody for attending, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much to the Epilepsy Society. Thank you for arranging this, and everybody take care. I hope Zach's gone off to school now. Good.